Hey guys, welcome to Wrench to Drive. We're back with the LDRC 1802 with some modifications. Number one, I added these shocks to the back end. These are, I believe, Injora 32mm SCX24 shocks. Now I say I believe because I ordered these off Amazon some time ago. The ad was very poorly worded, and it did not 100% say the brand. It was one of those super generic-y type deals. I got them really cheap. They were on sale. That's why I gambled. They come with a bunch of different springs. I'll show you the Injora ad in the background here, and I'm pretty sure these are the same shocks. Almost positive. But I'm waffling because I don't want you to go out there and buy them and then go, "Oh, you bastard, you lied." I'm not trying to lie. I got these cheap. Now, the price at Injora, that $25, seems a little steep to me, guys. I paid nowhere near that. So, use your own judgment. 32mm shocks for this mod. That's what I used. For perspective, just so when you're looking at this, you'll have a good idea of the scale we're talking about. So there's the shock installed on this goofy shock mount that I made here. In case you're wondering, this popsicle stick is because I printed it out of TPU and it's a little too bendy, although it does indeed work. Notice right there, screw going in one side, screw going in the other. That goes through the screw hole in the top of the gearbox, and that holds the mount in place. I added a whole bunch of holes just to, so I'd have some options, and quite frankly, they're a waste of energy. Only the top ones are relevant. I got to adjust them slightly. I also need to make this, I think, a hair narrower. The outside ones are actually pretty much in the perfect spot, but I had to take out the inner fenders in order to get this to work on the car. And it's a really close fit, and I was debating whether or not to auger out the inner fender so that it would work, and I just figured I'd take it out for now and then try it out. It does indeed work fairly well. I'm going to put some video in the background here so you can see. So there's two things to note. With the stock electronics, I would say it definitely drives better, but with the lowest gain gyro setting, there's a very noticeable clockwork effect when you're cornering. So the gyro is constantly catching it. I think that's because it's fairly stiff. It seems like it works pretty well, and I'll get into that a little bit more in a sec, but that was a problem I had out of the box with this car. And if you saw my first video, the problem that I had was that my rear suspension was not working very well, and the car basically sat bottomed out with the tires touching the wheel wells, and so essentially it had no rear suspension, and it had that clockwork effect. So that kind of suggests to me that if the back end is very stiff, you start to see that clockwork effect, and this is definitely a little bit stiffer than stock. So I believe that explains the problem. Now for me, not a huge issue because it goes away with the next mod I'm going to talk about. So that's something to keep in mind. These shocks come with 3 sets of springs. These are the stiffest ones, so you can definitely soften these up. And I probably will. I just haven't got around to trying that out yet. The car is still undrivable with no gyro. If anything, it's probably a little more squirrely because it's fairly stiff. With the stock gyro, the loosest setting, the 25%, it's like I said, it's got a pretty noticeable clockwork. 50%, it's pretty darn good. 75% and 100%, I agree with a lot of people. Like, I think that's too much gyro. The car definitely drives, but it doesn't drift as well as it could. Now the other modification that I made is I added this DumboRC G02 gyro. This is the one with the gain and the PCA, which is priority control adjust. So that's got something to do with the gain / the the correction factor. I rolled the dice on this DumboRC gyro because I watched a review on Beaver's hobby channel. Beaver's the man when it comes to drift stuff. His advice was buy the cheapest one, don't buy either of the more expensive ones. I rolled the dice on this because it was $8 more, and for $8 more I wanted the extra adjustability of the priority control, just to see. I was curious. Boy oh boy guys, my reaction is that was $8 wasted. I'm not 100% on that yet, so stay tuned. I'll probably do a full review of that gyro once I've used it some more. But I don't know, I think Beaver was right. I suspect getting the cheapest one is probably the way to go. Now, the good news is that the gyro function of this gyro is pretty darn good, and it's a pretty sweet little gyro, an aluminum case, and it's easy to set up, and it's got endpoints, and I mean, it seems pretty nice, guys. I'm fairly impressed. It works pretty well. So more on that again, like I said, probably in another video. But what I wanted to let you know is that in this car, it definitely works well. I mean, putting some videos into this of it running with little captions that tell you what the setup is with each change. Definitely, my friends, with the DumboRC gyro and the rear suspension, this thing drifts pretty nice. The nicest I've got it to drift anyways. And the thing you'll notice with the DumboRC gyro is that if you don't like that constant correcting, that kind of front wheel gyro chatter, that pretty much goes away. Like it is reduced absolutely massively. So if that's what you're after, that DumboRC gyro will definitely get you there. If you want perfect drifting, like really hanging that rear end out, it doesn't quite get you that far. It probably gets you about 45 degrees, I would say, something like that. That's pretty good. I mean, that's a pretty nice drift, but it's not, you know, crazy drifting. It won't hold it doing that, at least not so far. I gotta play, like I said, I gotta play with it some more. Maybe it's got that in it. I'm a little doubtful. Maybe. We'll see. So this rear suspension mod, definitely pretty easy. I'm going to show you a picture. I also did it with 2 popsicle sticks, cut and with holes drilled for the shocks. And the only reason I switched back to this is because my hot glue gun is out on loan. Never loan out your tools, my friends. Never loan out your tools. And with just 2-sided tape, the popsicle stick suspension mount was a little too wishy-washy, and it was not 100% consistent. So I switched to this one, and as I mentioned, this popsicle stick is screwed on because the TPU is a little soft. This rear suspension mod definitely works pretty well. It's not bad. It's very, very consistent compared to the stock setup. And last but not least, my friends, I wanted to let you know on the stupidest mod that I didn't see coming. So I had this gyro in it for a little while, and I cannot really endorse this gyro. I don't think it's particularly good. It's about $20 these days. For an extra $5, get the DumboRC one. It's much better. Way better. This type of gyro, okay, qualifier. This is old. I bought this at least 5 years ago. I'm really hoping the new ones are better, but I'm somewhat skeptical. This gyro probably does an okay job if what you want is to keep the car going straight, like to catch it if it gets out of whack. Even that is a little bit suspect because I did put it in a Go Fast car at some point, and I was disappointed. It was not stellar. If you turn the gain up a little too high, you got major wobble, and if you turned it down too low, it really didn't seem to do much. So I never have been a huge fan of this, but the reason I'm talking about it, I made a mistake. I had this in the car. I thought I had unhooked it. I thought I was just running the stock electronics. I was not. It was hooked up. And I noticed that the car seemed to be driving quite a bit better. The gyro effect was very nice on the low setting. And I couldn't figure out why. I hadn't really changed anything. I was like, is my suspension working better? I didn't know what to think. Well, it was using two gyros. It was using this gyro on a relatively low gain setting and the stock gyro on the 25% gain setting. That's important. When you turn it on at first and the gyro is at 100%, it's definitely, I would say, not better. When you change the gyro mode and kick it at 25%, that's when all of a sudden you're wondering, why is the car so much better with the gyro at minimum? It's very strange, right? It was one of those head scratchers. And like I said, it took me a second to put it together because I thought I had unhooked it. Give that a try, guys. Give that a try. Now, it is worth mentioning, I tried that with the DumboRC. Nowhere near as good. The combination of the two gyros with the DumboRC and the built-in, at no setting do I find that to be an improvement, because the DumboRC smooths out that gyro wobble, that gyro twitching tremendously. It's very smooth with the Dumbo, as you'll see in the background. So take that for what you will. My advice is not to go out and buy one of these because it works good when you have it in line with the stock gyro. That's not my advice. Please do not misunderstand. I don't recommend that. If you happen to have one of these and you want to try that, give it a shot. I was pleasantly surprised. It seems to be a combination that works okay. Now, another piece of advice that I saw the other day, and it's not so much advice as it is a bit of an insight into how gyros work. Apparently, not all gyros are created equal, and not just in function, in terms of the cars that they work well in. And the reason is that not all cars have the same steering geometry. So like a car like this that has full-on drift steering, direct drift steering, major angle, is not necessarily going to like every gyro, because the more the gyro has the function oriented to drifting, the more it's not supposed to just straighten the car out. It's supposed to let the back end hang out. In order to do that, it needs to have a mathematical function of some sort in the steering correction. Now, apparently, from somebody who's run a lot more gyros than me, it is very common that some pretty decent gyros do not work well in every car. So you could spend a lot of money on a gyro only to find that in your particular application it doesn't work that well. So my point here, it is definitely worth taking note of which car the gyro that you're interested in is being demonstrated with. So for example, this DumboRC gyro works pretty well in this car, in my opinion. It might not work well in other cars. It might work better in other cars. We don't know until we try, right? So definitely, if you're looking at a video of this LDRC car driving and it's got a gyro in it and it works awesome, well, that's probably a good gyro to buy. Now, if it's one of the crazy expensive ones, $50 to $60 or more, well, that's a lot of money. I'm not sure it's worth putting that expensive of a gyro in this car. I got this one for $35 with a coupon. So $35 plus I put a coupon on, so I got a little bit cheaper. I was perfectly willing to swallow that price. To me, that wasn't crazy, right? And you can get the one function DumboRC one, the G01, for about 25 Canadian, so like $20 US. Not a stupid amount of money. That's reasonably inexpensive for a nice metal case gyro that does indeed work pretty well in this car, considering that this little bad boy's also $20 Canadian, so 15 US. For $5 more, I would 100% recommend the DumboRC. So there you go. Hopefully this end of this video jibes with the end of the running spots in the background. Hopefully that's helpful to you. This rear suspension mod, I would say, is definitely worth taking a look at, especially if you are having trouble getting your rear suspension to work out of the box like I was with the spring. Oh, by the way, the spring is gone. So my spring, one side seemed softer than the other. In case you haven't seen the other video, if you're having a similar problem and you don't want to spend $10 on the spring, I would definitely consider spending a little bit more potentially on shocks and upgrading the back end of this car to shock absorbers. In my opinion, it is definitely better. It is adjustable. Softer springs, I think, are my next step to see if I can improve it a little bit more. The tricky bit, as always, is if the soft ones are too soft and the stiff ones are too stiff, you kind of have a problem. Usually you can turn down the adjusters and stiffen up the soft ones, but it's always an adventure, right? So there you go. Hopefully that's helpful to you. I do really like this car. It's really grown on me. And with this gyro, it drives a lot better. Oh, one thing I wanted to mention before I depart. Holy smokes, guys, this rear-wheel drive drifting, there is definitely all sorts of nuances to the skills that you need. And this car, the one thing that is really, really nice about the stock electronics, the low speed wheel speed control is actually pretty good. You got to have a delicate finger, but you can keep these wheels turning at a relatively low speed and get a decent drift going, and then blip it to get it sliding, and then ease off the throttle to keep your control. Works pretty well. One of the downsides with the 124th or 128 scale cars, the smaller ones, a lot of the brushed ESCs, the low end control isn't super good, and it actually makes it really hard if you're gonna drive them in rear wheel drive. Four wheel drive, they tend to work pretty well. Rear wheel drive, a bit of an issue. And there's spoilers. There's a review coming out of another car that has a rear wheel drive conversion, and I've had no end of troubles trying to get that thing going in rear wheel drive and have it be drivable. It's like, holy crap, it's nasty. This car is so much better, and for that reason, I gotta say, if you're looking to get into rear wheel drive drifting, definitely these cars are totally worth the money for the small price point to get into it. Yes, they're not perfect, but boy oh boy, they work pretty well, I gotta say. Anything you're gonna buy that is vastly superior is a lot more money, so take that into account. So that's it for this edition of Wrench to Drive, where we ask the eternal question: do you drive to wrench, or do you wrench to drive? See you next time.